the president of space. On Saturday there was no devlog because I went to the mountains and sang Row, Row, Row Your Boat with my science officer for no apparent reason. So anyway, let's talk about the state of my game. This week I mainly, when I had time, I worked on the minimap, and here it is. It more or less works, and you can now scale it so that you can see more of the map at the same time. Also, I added this new area up top, which we'll see just in a second. And as you can see, the doors show on the map, so it's kind of useful. Also, when you go to the checkpoint, you can now save your game, and there's this nice little icon in the bottom right corner to remind you of this fact. And as you can see, I played some Celeste on the Pico 8, and I made this really obnoxious area, which I hopefully be able to pass right now to just show you Mr. Robot here, who will of course kill you on when you touch him. Okay, that's pretty much everything I worked. You can, go outside the bounds of the map, and you will land somewhere weird. But I also said that I was going to talk a little bit about the tech stack I am using to develop the game. So let's do it now. As you can see, I'm on a Mac, and I don't apologize for it. At work, we all use Macs, and I kind of got used to it. And I found that I work best on one. And I like the combination of the power of Unix and the ease of use of the mainstream desktop environment. So that's what I do. And with that out of the way, let's talk about engines. In general, I have this terrible habit of trying too many game development tools. So I'll read about something, download it, watch half a tutorial, and the best case scenario, I'll make something barely playable and move on. Or worst case scenario, I'll move on. I kind of stopped it when I found Pico 8. I was able to complete a couple of projects without too much distraction, but then came the decision what to use to develop Caverns of Ksantarus, and my first choice was monogame here, because everyone with a success story in the indie game industry uses either Unity or monogame, and I like pure programming frameworks and open source, so I decided to try it. But when I started working on the actual game, monogame was in this terrible spot between versions. And the last version kind of worked, but you had to jump through really annoying hoops to set anything up on the Mac. And even if it did, nothing seemed to work as expected, so I ditched it and decided to go with Hexflixel. I've already made a game a couple of years ago with Hexflixel, and it worked fine. I had some problems with compiling it on various platforms, but not anymore. They seem to fix it, and now compiling it on both Mac and Windows is really easy. What it is, basically, it's the old Flixel framework for Flash games, but reworked in the Hex programming language. It's multi-platforms, as I've discussed. And it's not just an ad. I mean, I literally used the same code and compiled it on Windows and Mac, and with nothing changed, and it worked just out of the box. So yeah, it's great. It's also free and open source. And Hex is a really pleasant language to write. I generally prefer maybe leaner frameworks. It gives you a lot of tools, and you have to do things in specific Hexflixel way. But I started the game. I am currently developing it using this framework, and that's what I'm gonna do. Period. Oh, it's good enough. So, which is the only thing better than good. Um, okay, for actually editing the code, I use Visual Studio Code, which is well, I use it for work as well. I pretty much use no other code editor. I'll use Atom or Sublime, but there are just edge cases. It has a great plugin for hacks, which is, I believe it's called Lime. I mean, for hacks and Lime, which is the the kind of framework on which Hacksflixel is based. And also IntelliSense works great for hacks, so it's very easy to write code in this editor. For other kind of technical related things, I use iTerm2 as my terminal emulator. This applies to Mac. It's a Mac only tool, but on Windows I highly recommend Git Bash. If you like Unix style commands, I kind of prefer them to the Windows command line, so that's what I use. And for Git, for managing, I keep my source code on GitHub, so I use GitHub Desktop to manage the code. It's just easier, faster, and you don't have to remember as many commands. For graphics, that's kind of weird. I use Pico 8. I developed all the main graphics for the game in Pico 8. I just kind of like the ease of use and the simplicity of this editor. So that's what I did. But then for some environmental art, I switched to Asprite. Asprite is a really nice tool, but unfortunately it used to be open source, and based on the GPL license, it's no longer the case. Either way, it was paid. You had to pay the $15 to compile it from source. Now you just kind of have to pay. But it's really nice software for building pixel art, and you also have a Pico 8 palette out of the box, so that's nice. Okay, next for tile maps, I use Tiled, obviously. It's pretty much the industry standard for tile maps. And also Hacksflixel has a very nice tiled integration, so it's probably pretty much a no-brainer. It's easy to use, it gets the job done, and because you have the object layers, you can pretty much set up the whole, design the entire levels just in this editor. You can add variables, so you can set everything up. You can, for example, set the player starting point. It takes some getting used to, but it's really a very good tool. I don't think that. Well, there are other tile editors, but this is kind of the best. Okay, for sound, I use just BFX. I mean, it fits the style of the game, and it's pretty easy to use, and it has never failed me before. So I have no, I'm not ashamed to admit that I use it for something else, something other than just game jams. I haven't decided what to use for music yet, because I hadn't I didn't get to that part yet. I think I don't know whether to use a tracker or just something like Linux Multimedia Studio just to make proper electronic music. That we'll see. And also for the last thing, for tasks, planning, and roadmaps and this kind of stuff, I use. Actually, I don't use anything on a computer. I use my bullet journal. But before you run out of the room screaming, mine is nothing like these fancy overworked form over content things made by other hipsters that use Macs. Mine is very ugly, very messy. Nothing is aligned. There's no straight lines. The writing is terrible, but this is how I do it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And it helps me keep organized. Well, it just works for me. So I no Trello cards for you. Okay, so that's it for today. If you want to share what tools you use for your game, let me know in the comments. I don't promise that I'll try them, but because I really shouldn't. I should stick to the things that I use right now and stop hopping from one to another. And also, most YouTubers at this point will beg you for subscribing and liking the video and hitting the notification bell, so let's just get it over with and move on. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time when I'll talk about something, probably.